And someone else who just walked in, everyone knows him, Lake Lewis. He just walked in, and we're going to have Lake come up to the show.
What's going on?
How you doing, Lake?
Good. I'm good. All righty, there we go.
Appreciate you coming out, man. Thank you for jumping on. I don't think
no
you and I have actually been introduced officially.
All right, yeah.
So Tailgate Ted,
Lake Lewis, nice to meet you.
likewise. I see you all over social media, tweeting everything about the team. You were out there today. What are your thoughts on just kind of what you experienced at camp? And how many camps have you been to in the past that you can compare this to?
This is my 13th year.
Okay.
Nice.
And you know, just this camp, I mean, today was obviously the first day the fans were back. You know, so there was a lot of excitement, you know, and it felt genuine excitement. It wasn't, you know, hoping and praying things could be good. And it's not about right now, you know, wins and losses. It's just that I think fans feel like they've got their team back, you know, maybe not a name, but they've got their franchise back. So it just seemed like there was a lot of enthusiasm out there. You know, when Sam Howell and Jacoby Brissett walked out, you know, they were almost taken aback with the fanfare, you know, with the chants and screams for them, you know. So it was just good to see that. Yesterday's practice, from a practice perspective, was really good. You know, they were getting after it yesterday, and I think that they kind of, you know, and I hate to say this because the fans were there for the first day today, but I think they kind of held them back a little bit today, because today's practice was very blah. It was very, you know, wasn't a lot of energy, but I just think that they're trying to look out for guys not to get injured. So maybe tomorrow they'll ramp it up a little bit more. So
I can appreciate that. They did throw that tight end pass in there. It was
that was for you. That was for the fans.
that was Logan Thomas.
Rabble-dabble.
I think it was Logan Thomas to Cole Turner.
Cole Turner.
Yeah, I mean, that was actually awesome. I mean, immediately Turner rallied and said, that was for all the fans
Did
here.
say that.
Yeah, because
to
that play will
really get
not
us
be
excited.
implemented in a game.
No, if it will, it's because it's like USA Soccer versus Vietnam.
You're right.
At that point, we got like 100,000 to 1 odds on losing that game.
Exactly.
But 13 years you've been covering the beat. You've been coming out here to camp, and I've been to, I want to say this is my 23rd training camp.
Nice.
And I was talking to, you know, Trista Langdon, one of the VPs over there, you know, Joey, Colby Beck, just a bunch of the execs saying that I cannot remember a time where it's a weekday that there have been this many fans out here at camp, and those bleachers they put in were completely full.
Yeah.
And it was standing room 3 deep behind us. And you've obviously been talking to the fans and kind of going around town. What's been the major sentiment? I mean, you mentioned getting the team back. That's what I was saying while I was doing a couple of interviews around it. But just being there today, has it been we've just been waiting for him to be gone, or is it now we just have it back and we can celebrate it again?
Yeah, I think it's the latter. I mean, you know, he's gone. You know, there's no getting around it. He's gone. You know, there were fans up until it happened officially last week, you know, that they still thought that he could, you know, Ghost from Christmas Past, you know, that he could come back and reclaim his team. But no, he's gone. And I think that, you know, you've seen the energy with the new ownership group. You know, you've seen, you know, just their preparation, the way they've gone about it, just seems like it's been kind of refreshing. You know, Josh Harris seems to be a very personable owner. You know, he's obviously a successful businessman, but he's a guy that doesn't strike you with an ego. You know, so he's approachable, and he's made that very clear. He's approached the fans, you know, for 2 days out at practice. Mitch Rails is more the finance guy, you know, he's the money guy, and he's a little bit more stoic, but he's still been out there as well. And then, of course, we know about Magic. I mean, Magic is Magic Johnson. He's a people person, you know, he's a smiling guy, you know, so it's just a different feel from what you've seen before with the, you know, the ownership group and Dan Snyder, and even the people that work for Snyder were all very stoic people, going back to, you know, Bruce Allen and Serrato, and those guys just, they weren't approachable type people. And, you know, so I think that's the refreshing part for the fans, is that not only do they feel like they've got their franchise back, but they feel like they've got people who are going to run their franchise that are going to be accessible, are going to be not tone deaf and things like that.
So one thing I do want to say, though, is there are, and this is just my opinion, there are some good people that work for this franchise that were hired underneath the Snyder regime. And we talked about it earlier on the show before you got here. Those bleachers, all those improvements that happened out there.
That was already in play.
Exactly.
That's not
And
the
a
new
lot of
ownership.
fans don't
Yeah.
know that.
Yeah, to
A
be
lot of
transparent, we
fans-
got to be transparent
Yeah,
about things.
And I tried to make sure that they knew that because, Joey and those guys,
Oh, yeah.
Joey's actually come out on social media and said, it's good to see this come to, maturation when they had this in play for over a year, so this was going to happen regardless. So, some fans are like, oh, wow, look what a new owner can do overnight. They didn't do that overnight. Trust me.
No, definitely not.
That would have had to have gotten a lot of approval and things like that. But regardless, the timing of it, it just looks new to everyone. I think it looks incredible, by the way.
It does.
It adds a really nice pleasantry to the facility to practice. And I can say, as a reporter being on that field, the bugs out there had always been an issue. And where the bleachers are, the main bleachers, that used to just be a weeded area, muddy, mucky, and a lot of mosquitoes and gnats. So to have something there, it's good. But I just think from an aesthetic standpoint, it looks really good out there. It does.
Looks professional.
Yeah,
Absolutely
it gives a
does.
true training camp look, if you will.
And the players notice that, and they've been telling us that they definitely, you have to remember a lot of these guys are coming from big time college programs where in college their facilities are trump most of the professional facilities. So they're coming to take a tour during pre-draft and stuff like that to the park, and they're like, okay, when we going to the main facility? No, this is the main facility. So now they've revamped the weight room quite a bit over the past 2 seasons. And not to stray guys, but I say this all the time. Say what you want about Ron Rivera from X's and O's standpoint, because he's opened the book to be critical of coaching. His record has proven that over his professional coaching career, it hasn't been good. But the one thing about Ron Rivera is he's a class act and he's a stand-up person. And he's, in my opinion, deserves an A, maybe even an A+ as far as the professionalism that he's brought to the franchise. Those players aren't getting in trouble. Things that we were so accustomed to seeing, they're just a good group of young guys and they're working hard. That's the professionalism that he's brought. So he's done a good job with that. And now to see all these other things start to, trickle in, and now you have new ownership, I think that's why everyone's so excited.
I always said that bringing him in, the time that he came in, it was needed.
Yes.
He definitely was needed. Do you feel that the game may have passed him?
That's a great question. That's a phenomenal question. And I've wondered that. The reason why I'm going to say no right now is because he brought in Eric Bieniemy. If you go back a couple of years ago, I was a big proponent for them to re-sign, their offensive coordinator, who now is the head coach in Minnesota. I thought Kevin would have done a great job here. And I thought when Ron Rivera came in, it was like, okay, you brought in, you're bringing in Del Rio for your defense. Well, keep your offensive coordinator who at the time was working wonders, even with the late Dwayne Haskins. He was doing some things. So I thought he should have taken a good look at Kevin, but he didn't. And people were like, well, why wouldn't he do that? And I'm like, maybe because he didn't want a younger guy underneath him that could potentially get him moved out, Well, now, fast forward, their offense needed a jolt, and they had talent. They have great young talent, but they needed a forward-thinking, modern mind, and that wasn't Scott Turner. Sorry, it just wasn't. And now you get Bieniemy, who's hungry to prove that he can do it on his own. And we all know, I mean, if you don't, I'll tell you right now, I know he's the coach in waiting. So
Gotcha.
With that being said, if you're Ron Rivera, this is a bold, gutsy move because this guy could take your job. But if he does take your job, it means there's been some success. And I think everyone can see that Ron Rivera is kind of positioning himself now to perhaps, get a front office role. And that's okay because it still breeds continuity. It still breeds the same people in the building. And now you'll have that forward modern day thinking coach. So to answer your question, I don't want to say the game's passed them by. I just think that there are guys that are ready to be, in the position of a head coach in today's game. And you got to be a little younger and a little bit more innovative. And that guy's in the building now.
Gotcha.
Now, I'm on record saying that I feel that Bieniemy is going to take over the head coaching role,
Mhm.
whether it is midway through this year
Mhm.
or next. I don't know if it's going to happen. Just Rivera's teams traditionally start off slow,
Absolutely.
and he has had 3 winning seasons as a head coach
Mhm.
his entire career.
Out of 13 seasons.
So,
yeah.
I mean, it's
Mm.
just doing the baseball card, averages here. It's not that good.
It's
He's
not.
a lame duck coach at this point.
Mhm.
We had Josh Kirby on talking a little bit ago. Josh is on the record saying that if Rivera goes 3-6 this
Mhm.
first 6 games, that the new Harris group will just give it to Bieniemy.
I don't think there's any debate if they're sputtering and we're at the halfway point and it just looks bleak because of the young talent that they have. You have to go ahead and bring the enemy on. You have to name him the coach. The problem that I have with that is that means the offense probably sputtering too, and he's going to have to take some heat for that as well. So it could be a whole new overhaul, which would not happen during the season, but it would be a clean slate overhaul after the season. So I think regardless of records, the new ownership group has so much on their plate now that they're really not going to get involved with the stuff that goes on the field, the X's and O's. So I think these coaches will be here for the year regardless of record at any point. I mean, they could be 0-15. They're going to finish the season 0-17. That would be bad. I would think somebody's incompetent to get rid of someone if they're 0-17. But I do believe that they're going to be here, and I think that there's going to be some success this season. That it's tangible success that you can actually see, you can actually feel. If you're a fan, you can taste the success. And I mean, you guys were out there. You see that from a depth standpoint, this is probably the deepest team they've had in probably ever since I've been covering them.
You think so?
Yeah, and I say that because the teams that were making the playoffs, they were just getting in. It wasn't like they were runaway freight trains. They weren't 13-3, 12-4.
They had to win
Yeah, they were
5 out of the last 6 games.
They were 7-9, and then 9-7. So you think of that, and you could say the division was down in those years, which we probably could say, but nevertheless they made the playoffs. But with that being said, if you remember those teams, if they had a frontline player go down, there was no backup. It was
They were calling people from
frontline
the
or
gas
bust.
station.
Yeah, it was frontline or bust. This team has guys that are not too far apart from a talent standpoint. I mean, you have your Terry McLaurins, but truthfully, as great as Terry is, the eye test will tell you Jahan Dotson's not that far behind, just
Okay.
from a skill set standpoint.
Mhm.
Curtis Samuel, not that far behind. So now you think about quarterback play. Yeah, that's always been the issue with the team. Who's going to be the quarterback? It's always been two, and people start taking favorites. I think from the eyeball standpoint, you can see that Sam Howell has every tool to be successful. He just needs the right guidance, the proper guidance, and that's where an Eric Bieniemy comes in. This was a team that the last 2 years had a chance to make the playoffs. They made it 3 years ago, but they had a chance each of the past 2 years. They just couldn't get it done down the stretch. And that was with average to bad quarterback play, call it like it is, with an even worse offensive coordinator guiding that. Well, now you would think that you have a step up in coordinator with Eric Bieniemy. I mean, regardless if he was calling plays in Kansas City or not, he was in that room putting that game plan together. So you got to give him some credit.
I mean, he got some of that knowledge through osmosis.
Of course. How could he
I mean,
not?
yeah.
You know what I mean? So, so he's prepped for this. And now you look at Sam Howell. I just remember the kid in college, covering in college. He could make every throw. He didn't have the same senior year he had his junior year, but all those guys his junior year were all drafted in the league, 2 backs and 2 wide receivers. So he just didn't have the same thing, but he still had really good numbers his senior year. And people have to understand he played for Mac Brown. They run a pro offense at North Carolina. He told us yesterday, literally after practice, that the RPO concepts and things like that, the terminology that Eric Bieniemy brought in from Kansas City are the same exact things he had in North Carolina. So he just feels more comfortable. So yeah, everything's there for them to be successful. But I don't think there's going to be a coaching change at all this year, none whatsoever.
I'm confident in Sam Howell.
Mm-hmm.
I'm happy that Sam Howell's our quarterback for a couple of reasons. One, if it doesn't work, I did not want this coaching staff to draft a quarterback that the new coach is going to have to deal with, a la Dwayne Haskins and RG3 and quarterbacks of the past. And I didn't want us to bring in a free agent that if it doesn't work, the new staff is going to have to deal with.
Exactly.
Sam has an arm. He said during his press conference yesterday, and I'm paraphrasing, but he has total control of the Eric Bieniemy offense, which I still find shocking considering how wordy an offense that is and how new an offense that is. So time will tell. But he did say that he could tell people where to line up and where to go. The concern I have is the offensive line.
Of course, and you saw today they struggled mightily. They couldn't keep
nice.
Exactly. Today was a tragic practice, if you ask me. If you have me rate the practice 1 to 10, 1 being bad, today's practice to me was probably a 3 to 4. It was
on the offensive line standpoint.
From the offense in general.
Okay,
it was first team offense. It was not good. And then second team offense didn't do a whole lot. There was a nice, deep route to Terry McLaurin. I mean, there are plays to be made, but yesterday was just crisp, and the defense still was making plays too, but they were going back and forth, and it was like, wow, this is good because the defense will make this offense better, and the offense will give the defense different looks now because you have a new offensive mind there. Today, it didn't click, and I think that was because maybe again it's day 2 of training camp. It's hot out here, extremely hot, and they're more cautious to make sure guys don't get hurt. Ron Rivera mentioned the soft tissue issues. So I think that's what this was. At least that's what I'm going to chalk it up to right now at this specific time. Tomorrow, I'll be able to tell you guys a little bit more, because if they come out and stink it up tomorrow offensively, then I'm going to start having this feeling in me, well, how are they ever going to be able to practice and get Sam Howell ready if the offensive line can't give him a pocket? And they didn't give it to him today.
So, Ted, you'll be out there tomorrow, you said, right?
I'll be out there tomorrow and all next week. And it cracks me up because, Smoot, love him. He loves to say iron sharpens iron, right? Well, nothing is as sharp as our defensive line.
Right.
You would think we talked about Eric Bieniemy. Even just being in that room with Andy Reid and getting those plays called with Nagy and everyone else there, that he would kind of ingest some of that. You would think that our guys lining up against our offensive line, lining up against these first round studs of the defensive line would pick up a couple of things. And I did not see it today. There's no pads. The guys cannot engage.
No,
do anything.
They can't.
But 13 years you've been out here covering camp. For a lot of those, you always hear the coaches telling the defensive line
to lay off.
Yes.
Slow down.
You just don't. The enemy's not going to allow that to happen. He's going to want them to come full throttle at all times, because that's what he wants them to have. Listen, this defense, we all know it should be a top 5 unit.
Yes.
Okay. Chase Young looks really explosive again. That adds another element that the defense was missing last year. Let's call it like it is, and they still were pretty good. You look at Emmanuel Forbes, who I'm extremely impressed with. I mean, he's a really good corner. And you have Martin, you have all these guys that they brought in. Defense will be better. Make no mistake about it. They were top 10 last year. I think they finished the season ranked 7. They're definitely a top 5 unit. That can't help but make the offense better. And if you go full throttle, you're getting a full game simulation. Your offensive line may look bad against your guys, but that's okay because they're a top unit. So they should get better when they play defenses that aren't as good or aren't as deep up front. So yeah, they should get better. But today was bad, and I'm a little concerned about that.
I think that what's going to happen is when we actually play against another color jersey, i.e. Baltimore, we're going to actually be able to see what the offensive line is truly capable of.
Yes.
And if they can't cut the mustard, making those substitutions to be able to put the right people in place or rearranging the line, whichever way they need to be able to do it. So that's what I'm really looking forward to. We always talk about on our pod, when you're playing against your brother, you kind of have a way of laying off a little bit.
Sure you do.
But when you are playing against someone who's just as hungry as you are, who's trying to fight for a job,
you see what's what.
There you go. And that's what I'm looking forward to.
And that's a great point. The other thing when you think of that is not only does it give you a chance to see who can do what, it gives you a chance to really know if what you have is enough. And we know about late cuts and things like that, or veteran cap casualties. If I'm Washington, they're clearly going to be monitoring offensive linemen out there. I hate that it would come in late, and and guys have been through OTAs, training camp, so maybe they don't have any kind of camaraderie or chemistry. But that's the unit that is the most talked about, not because they're good or they can be like electrifying like the wide receivers or how the D-backs now are getting some love, and we know about the defensive line. So the conversation naturally flows even more so from Sam Howell. It flows to the offensive line and the linebackers. So you've got to see what you can do with that. And that's a whole nother story. I don't know if you guys talked about, but Jamin Davis is not getting love right now. I know he's coming back from an injury.
He's coming back.
Yeah,
We're
he
giving
is.
him a little bit
But
of
it just
leeway
it's just
at
kind
that
of
point.
eye popping.
Let's face it, he hasn't received any love since he's gotten
He
here. I
hasn't.
mean, so he should be used to it at this point. I hate to say that, but I mean, he
Yeah.
really hasn't.
Yeah.
And he's had bright spots. He's
Yeah.
had bright spots,
Yeah.
but he's
He
had
got beat today really bad.
Yeah.
And by a guy that might not make the team. Let's just be honest with Patterson. He's a good young back, but
I don't think he's making.
but I don't see it.
We were
I just
talking about
don't.
that.
Yeah. So he got
actually
beat.
saying, I don't know why Jarrett keeps coming back to camp here because there are so many people in front of him.
Yeah.
They just drafted,
a
another
guy to
running back
replace you, basically.
that is going to take a roster spot because they made that investment in him.
Yes.
So why do you keep coming back here and coming to practice and trying, other than you want to put tape on someone else?
I think that's what it is. And I think maybe his folks told him this time around with the enemy, the way he uses his backs, maybe the tape on him could be that he's versatile, that he can catch passes, a la the touchdown that he caught today over Jamin Davis. So those are good things for tape, but
That was a fade from Brissett.
it
was.
was.
That was insane.
It was.
Too. The shortest guy on the, not quite the shortest, but yeah.
And he had Jamin beat by 3-4 yards. Jamin did recover, but and again, I'm gonna give Jamin the benefit of the doubt that he's coming off an injury, and it takes time. But it wasn't like an injury to cost you the year. I mean, it was an off-season procedure. But at the end of the day, right now for this team, they need someone in the middle, and right now it looks like it might be Khaleke Hudson.
Yeah, Khaleke is actually
might
doing
be the
damn
guy. Yeah.
It's exciting to see him come up there. It frustrates me because it's part of the issue I have with Ron Rivera, the GM.
We don't
He
want
was
him to
never,
be a GM.
No, he was never worth the 19th pick in the draft.
No.
Maybe for a team or a franchise that was not rebuilding, but you need someone to have an immediate impact on your roster. And to put him at Mike and then realize that you made a mistake and have to move him, where you have a defensive coach from the 85 Bears that cannot recognize a linebacker.
You have Michael Singletary. I mean, come on. And the other thing is, this isn't to knock Jamin's quality of play, because regardless, Kentucky's the SEC, and their program has definitely come around. Their top 25 program, maybe you can say fringe top 25. But I've always said, when you're a team that's rebuilding and you're trying to bring in, players that can compete and win, I need them to come from big time winning programs, because they know what the investment is needed to have some success. I don't want projects from schools that aren't known to produce players. And that's not knocking Kentucky, and it's not knocking Jamin, because I think Jamin's very talented. I think he came on strong last year. I think he had a really good year. I think his second year was really good because they put him on the outside. But this team, more than any other team in the league right now, you talk about devaluing running backs around the league. Well, the Commanders devalue linebackers, and they're phasing that position out.
Yeah.
They absolutely are. So they're going to be playing games a lot with one guy in. They'll be rotating, but it'll be one in at one time. I don't see them ever having three traditional linebackers on the field. I just don't see it. If they do, it'll be one and quick and they're done. So, you have to find the linebacker you want in the middle. Is it Barton? Is it Hudson? Is it Jamin Davis? You drafted Jamin Davis in the first round. It has to be every reason for him to be. And whether you're bringing him along slowly or not, it's going to become a confidence thing if you keep doing this. You know how we've seen these guys play with guys' minds and they can't recover. I think Jamin's a fragile guy like that. And I'm not knocking him. It's just that he's heard all this stuff. He knows what's going on. And when I say he's fragile, I don't mean because I'm telling you he's a fragile man. I'm just saying, this is a precarious situation, and you know how fans can be. And once they start coming and keep coming and keep coming, then you see sometimes guys they can't recover from
Take my football and go home.
Right, exactly.
And this staff is not ashamed to move guys. I mean,
No,
they
they're
drafted
not.
Sam Cosme
Mhm.
to play tackle.
And he definitely was not a tackle.
No, his
He's a
arms are
guard.
too short.
He's
a guard.
Brandon Sheriff 2.0 as far as not his game. Let me make sure I rephrase that. But there was a time 2 years ago, he was standing next to Brandon in one of the practices, and I was with another person. I said, look at them. They almost look like from the back, they look like clones of each other. I said, this guy's going to end up being a guard. And sure enough, they moved him to guard. His arms aren't long enough, like they said. So they want versatility. They're doing it with Sadiq Charles. Sadiq Charles a tackle. Let's just say what he is, but they really want for some reason him to play guard. And I think that's I don't like it. I think he should be getting every opportunity to be your right tackle, or your maybe even your left tackle. Play guys to their strength, but sometimes they feel like the strength of a guy is what they see in them, and I don't know. That goes back to that talent evaluation.
Well, to me, it's also the whole position flex thing. Can we just get a guy
that
is
play
good
one position
at the one thing he does?
yes.
It's people go to trade schools all the time
to get that one trade.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let's just get that one.
I don't want my carpenter operating on.
No, let's get that one all-pro guard and not let him walk away.
You know what I'm saying?
That would be good.
And if I saw my carpenter, do great work in college, I don't want to try to make him do something else, and I don't mean just any college. Sadiq Charles was playing at a high level at LSU, and they're a powerhouse. And then you bring him here, and next thing you know, you're trying to maneuver him around. And there was even some talk at one point that maybe he can even play center. And I'm like, we can't do that. Stop.
Once again, we got Lake Lewis here that we're speaking with. A couple more questions. I know you're busy, Lake. What do you want to see as one of the biggest changes that the organization can make?
You mean currently or just in general?
In general.
I would like to get the name thing put to bed once and for all.
So with that being said, are you for Commanders or are you against Commanders?
A lot of people don't like when I say I was for the Washington football team.
So, okay.
I was, and then I just said, okay, it's Commanders. I'm going to be for the Commanders because I am in that crowd of just win football games.
Bingo.
You win football. If they go out this year and do the impossible and win the Super Bowl as the Commanders, do you change the name?
No, you don't change the name.
You can't.
No.
And fans will be fans still saying change the name, but going to the Super Bowl party. So you can't have it both ways.
Yeah.
So my thing is, it's a name. I understand the attachment with Redskins. We all do. Everyone knows what that meant to all fans of the team. I'm from DC, so I don't have the fandom like that being in the media, but I'm from DC. This was the team I grew up rooting for. So to be able to come back here from Florida and all the places I've been in my media career to cover them, it was an honor. It was a dream come true. But I know the history of the organization, and I think people have to understand it's still the same organization. You can't be desensitized to the whole fact of we know what the name was to a lot of people, but we also know what the name wasn't to some others. And for me, you change the name. The colors are still the same. That was my biggest thing.
Yeah,
please just don't change the colors. The history's still there. Nothing's changed except for the name. The fight song still sounds very similar. It's just different, tempos.
Well, because they're being half-assed.
Yeah, of course. It's different tempo, of course. If there was a way you can get the name of the Redskins back, I'd be all for it. I really would. If it meant acknowledging some things along the way. Yeah, I'd be all for that. But I just want to see it put to bed. I'd like the new ownership group to say, hey, we are going to change this name. This isn't our permanent name. Then fans could be like, wow. Then you can have your chatter about what the name will be. But I'd like the ownership group to say, we're going to change the name and this is what it's going to be. Because you guys know, let's just call it like it is. I haven't seen a name yet. And fans are going to surf now and say, no, that's not true. I can tell you this team did it. No, you didn't. Listen, They say the fans pick the names. They don't. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it.
Henceforth, the Guardians.
It's a marketing thing that the teams have to say. It's a lot that goes into it. It really is. I don't know how far this team went into it. That's the problem with the Commanders name. That was not a fan favorite by any means, and no one even knew of it. I heard more Admirals before I heard Commanders.
Well, I was in some of those focus groups.
Yeah,
It didn't come up.
yeah. Red Wolves obviously was around. Red Tails were around. Warriors. And those were names that people were like, okay, I can get with that. You know, all of those names had some kind of positive thing to it with the fans. But when it came out, it's the Commanders. People were like, they didn't know anything about this. You know, I hadn't heard anything about that in the media, even it being in the building. I didn't know any of this. So it was kind of a blindsided thing. But I also just encourage fans to realize this. When they say they want to erase and wipe any trace of Dan Snyder away, Dan Snyder purchased the Redskins, and the Redskins were under his watch for 95% of his tenure as the owner. You're not erasing that. I mean, do you understand what I'm saying? If you say you want the Redskins, that was him. That was the bulk of his tenure, and it wasn't good. So, you know, if you're going to say you want to erase everything that came with him, then that means you got to erase that too. You can't have one without the other.
Well, I think that when they say Redskins, they hark back to
The
Super
good
Bowl.
old
The
days,
Super
of
Bowl,
course.
yeah.
When we can remember
yeah,
a winner.
Not just because of Snyder, but the
Absolutely.
Super Bowls, the three Super Bowls
Of
before he
course.
was there. So that's what they
mean,
they go by that.
I
With
get
that
it.
logic, I mean, George Preston Marshall,
Was the biggest racist of them all.
and he has
So,
basically been erased.
absolutely.
No one thinks about him when you think about this team.
Absolutely.
And from a fan's perspective, when we think of the Redskins and the name, we don't think of Dan. And those years that Dan was here, he had 2 playoff wins and one wasn't his.
Yeah, right.
So
right.
realistically, I don't think anyone cares. But I agree with you. We're talking about this at the beginning of the show. I just want them to change it and not tell us anything, not give us any
I
options,
totally
not make it
agree
a
with you.
survey.
Totally
Don't
agree.
do a Boston market survey like the Wizards did.
And
going
then
from
they
the
go from a
Bulls.
name that's the perfect example right
Out
here
of
in
the
your
blue.
own town.
Yeah.
No one thought of Wizards.
No.
It was, I remember it was like River Dogs and all these different names,
Mhm.
the monuments, you know, because they're tall, you know, but when they said Wizards, it was embarrassingly bad. I still don't like that name. I like the Bullets, you
Yeah.
know, but again, there was a political reason why that was changed. And I'm from DC, so I understand. You know, this is my thing. If you want to keep sports and politics apart, because that seems to be that's what the nucleus of it was, hey, you don't want your Sundays about politicians, even though the politicians are at the games, you know. You just want to be able to escape and get away and have
Right.
a chance to yell and scream and then you go to work again on Monday. That's what the basis of all this used to be. Well, that's not the world we live in today. It's just not. Unfortunately, it is a cancel culture. And if things aren't politically correct, they're going to go after it. And, you know, but you're not going to make everybody happy. That's the thing. Like the Commanders, half the fan base to me seems like they're okay with it if they just win. But then the other half is like, we can want both. We can want a name change and we want them to win. I think that's a little much. I really do. I know there's, you know, you guys deal with it more than I do outside, but I mean, you support this team. You support this team through hell or high water.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. You know, I see you guys on road games, you know, so if they win, I'm asking you as fans, if they win the Super Bowl, I'll keep myself as media out of it, but if they win the Super Bowl this year, would you be upset if they came out after the year and said, we're going to change the name?
Would I be upset? I guess I'm one of these fans. I go along to get along, so to speak.
Mhm.
So the name could be the Washington Pixie Sticks. I always say that name.
Yeah.
And as long as they're winning, I don't care. I'm not one who's going to trip on the name too tough.
Okay.
I just want to win.
Yeah.
And whatever name they come up with, I'll back it because, as you said, I'm a fan.
You're a fan.
Just at some point in time, we've got to put it to bed.
Have to.
Yeah, we got to put it to bed.
If we win the Super Bowl,
Yeah.
and you change it,
Would you be upset?
I'd be pissed.
Right.
I'd be damn pissed because
Now you
When
have an
are you going to
identity
stop?
as a winner
exactly that is on a trophy.
on a trophy.
That is on a Lombard trophy. Now, being realistic, Ain't happening.
We know that.
We're not winning. I'll put my 401k
They
down.
can get the
that we're trying to
playoffs.
do.
They can get to the playoffs, but they're not going to the Super Bowl. Right?
But it's just my friend Brian Hall came up with this, and he said, if I'm lucky enough to raise a child and I get a chance to walk her down the aisle and hand her over, give my blessing away, and then she gets married and changes her last name. The second her last name is changed, none of those memories went away. Me pushing her on a swing stays the same.
Of course.
Me remembering to talk to her prom date and say, have her home at this time, that doesn't go away. None of these memories I have with my father going to RFK for the first time and watching a grown man shed tears because he finally got to take me to a game goes away.
Exactly.
So all of these fans that are yelling and screaming about it, the name is nothing. The memories are everything. And let's make new ones.
And I'll add on
this name or different.
And I'll add on to that because I use that analogy too. There was a gentleman that got in my Twitter and was like, no one can make me change how I feel about the name. My grandfather took me to my first game. He said this, and I just told him, I said, so you still have that memory. That memory's never going away. But guess what is going away? Your grandfather. You understand what I'm saying? Your grandfather's definitely going away. If things go the way natural life is supposed to go, grandfather's going to go away, but your memories won't go away for him. So what makes you think your memories are going to go away for this team? So again, I just think sometimes fans do get over emotional about it. And I liken this to sometimes certain fans carry this as if it's like a safe gang to be part of. It's not a violent gang. It's not a gang causing crime and trouble, but it is almost like sometimes how people are with their politics. They didn't identify with anything growing up and they weren't part of anything. So now they latch on to something that they can be boisterous about. And it's safe. They can get away with saying mean things and stuff like that. And I think there are some fans that have been jaded because of what's gone on here for the last 20 something years. But guys like us who are old enough to remember the winning and how it shut the city down, when you had Dallas week and you couldn't even focus in school, you just knew that those were going to be wars. Those are the things that I think if the younger generation of fans are able to experience, they're not going to care what the name is. No. They're really not.
They won't. I used to have a TV show with Larry Michael at the park, and it would make me so angry. And Larry would say, why are you so pissed? But I would come in and they would literally have a sign on the door that said Dallas week.
Yeah, man. It was real.
Find your players, and it's Dallas week.
Right.
Come on now. You're trying to fabricate
this
just rivalry here where it should be there inherently. And,
and you have to stop pushing. And I'm cool with all the guys. You guys know that I'm great friends with a lot of the players, especially former players now. But you have to create a new narrative. You can't keep showing, Riggins, running down against the Dolphins. We know this. It's ingrained in everyone's DNA who's want to see this team be successful. Everyone knows these stories. Everyone's seen them if you're of a certain age. But, you have some old timers that talk about, the 71 hung on the Giants in 66, things like that. Those are their memories. Well, the younger people need to see some new memories, and you guys can remember the time when the Patriots stunk,
and
the
Seahawks stunk.
The Seahawks stunk, and then here you come in there where Tampa was definitely bad. Well, we've seen all these teams get some Super Bowls over the last 10, 15 years, so it's a time that's happening. The Detroit Lions are hopeful that they can get into their first Super Bowl ever. They think they have a chance this year. So what I'm saying is that the young people in Detroit, they don't care about those stories from Alex Karras and those guys from the 50s and 60s. They probably don't even care about Barry Sanders. They just want to win today. And I promise you, if this team goes on a nice run this year and you see that the trajectory is going even further for next year, I don't think that the name is going to be such a big issue. But the ownership group has to, so to answer your question again, they've got to put a stop to this and end it. It's either going to be Commanders and that's it. It's going to go back to Washington football team and that's it. You don't have to do a major rebrand if you do that. But then there are people on social media today. Oh, I hate the Washington football team. There was no identity to it. But you don't like the Commanders either. So I mean, come on, what's going on here?
You're not
They
gonna make
want the
everybody
old
happy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're not going to make everybody happy. That's
You're
just
not
it.
getting that old name back.
No,
Do
it's not
so.
coming back.
Right,
And
right.
Chris Cooley was talking on the Kevin Sheehan show, and this was maybe 2 or 3 years ago when our name changed. Said, if Snyder's smart, that's huge F, he'll keep it Washington football team because whoever buys it can then name it whatever in the world they want to.
Absolutely.
And I wish that would have happened because we wouldn't be going through this. And it's a debate we're definitely not going to finish today. But Lake, it's nice to officially finally meet
Yeah,
you.
man, this was good. This was I've done appearances on people's shows, and there's been times I can say I'm like, man, it's got me a long time here. This is not good. I gotta go. But no, this was great, man. Very engaged the whole time. Good stuff.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
It's nice to finally, get a chance to actually talk to you other
Appreciate
than,
it.
in
Yeah.
social media and Twitter.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thanks, man. You guys keep up the great work,
Thank
and
you.
love to
Likewise.
come back on with you.
And so just so our listeners can know, where can they follow you, Lake, if they don't know about you?
Yeah, you can. I mean, you can check me out on social media at on Twitter at Lake Lewis, and then on Instagram, Facebook, Threads at Lake Lewis Jr. You can go to Sports Journey, and I have some stuff coming up, through my ABC, obviously, news stuff. So yeah, man, it's a lot of stuff going on out there. Appreciate it. Though.
All right. So last question before you go. Yes
Yeah.
or no? Yes or no answer.
Yeah.
Will the team be back at the old RFK grounds?
Yes.
There
Heard
you
it.
have it.
All right.
Yes.
Lock it up.
Yes, I think that's the logical move for everyone. And obviously a lot of red tape they've got to get through, but the DC wants them back now.
Okay.
And that's where they belong. Can't practice in Ashburn, live out here and play your games in Maryland and bypass DC to get to where you're going either way. And your name Washington Commanders or whatever the name would be. Yeah, so you got to get back to the DC area.
All right. Appreciate it, Lake. Thank you again.
All right, guys. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you, man.
Thanks.
Riley, I don't know about you, man. This has been one hell of a day. From
Yes.
being out at camp, I did have a couple don't sleep energies to start off. So that's
Mhm.
probably why I'm not dragging right now, but I don't think I needed it. The energy from our fellow fans out there at practice today, the energy from everybody we had out here at the brewery, and just coming on the show to have Lake Lewis jump on with us, our boy Tim, just all these other people that love this team and cover this team. And just, it's absolutely unreal, man. It really was.
Yeah. So I really, really appreciate everybody from Mellow T, Lake Lewis, Tim, Josh. That's what it boils down to, guys. And this is probably the longest pod that we've had.
Oh, we're gonna cut this up.
Oh,
It ain't gonna be one.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right. We're going to cut this up. So I hear the music in the background, which lets me know that we have come to another ending episode of the DMV Mess Hall. And before we go, like you said, the only time I needed my don't sleep was on the way here. Once I got here, fan base brought me back to life. So thank you to everyone that showed up. You could be listening anywhere, anyone, but you decided to listen to the DMV Mess Hall. We greatly appreciate it. And in closing, as the captain always says, you rep it hard, but don't rep it at all. Tailgate Ted, Rally Captain, and we're out.